Welcome, everyone. We are into episode 58 for Caster Calls with ZombieGrub. I am here with Liefx, as I guess I'll be calling you from now on. Thank you so much for coming on to talk to us about casting and hosting, in particular Rocket League. I know that you're also very much into, what is it, Star Citizen? Am I?
Yeah, I'm in a
Yeah.
lot of stuff, but yeah, don't get me started on Star Citizen because it will not. That'll be the whole show.
Yeah, I saw the very passionate about that game. Which
Yeah.
I know very little about, but I did actually take a look a couple of your videos just out of curiosity, and I was like, oh, it's one of those games. It's like, oh, I don't know the other. Well, shoot, actually, I brought it up. Can't even think about it. But the
There's other ones like Elite Dangerous, No Man's Sky, kind of that big
yeah,
open world, universe kind of thing. So
yeah. But the
again,
point is,
as I
like, it's
said, don't get me started.
a lot of detail, a lot of
Uh-huh.
information to gather, which I would still say is quite different from a lot of esports. Now, esports is certainly, it's got its neat little details, and Rocket League can be,
Hmm.
especially like perception wise, it can look simple, but all I've ever heard listening to you guys talk about it, casters, listening to people have details about it, listening to people try to cast it and then be told like, okay, you didn't know what you're doing, is that it's actually really complicated. So looking forward to getting
Uh-huh.
into some of the nitty gritty as we get into the podcast. But we always start off with a bit of background, how you actually made it into the esports
Hmm.
world. What got you here?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. Always like talking Rocket League, and again, a little teaser of Star Citizen there. So, but yeah, getting into just esports and casting in general was like, oh man, I could give you the long story, the quick story. I'll give you the semi-long story of it. It was esports for the longest time too. Has just been very grassroots. Like a lot of they're starting to now, but there weren't a lot of degrees for it. You can go to school for it. It was just something you had to fall into, had a passion for, and a lot of people just did it, pro bono. It was all out of just their love for it. Thankfully, that's changing. So all the people putting in hard work can make livings off of it. But for me, it started back. I was doing YouTube just for fun, back in the probably the late 2000s there to just around 2007, 2010. And then I was like, this is fun. I just want to do it as a side thing. And eventually going through college, I always had an affinity for gaming and I was always competitive with my friends. And eventually I ended up working for in my dad's restaurants. And during the NHL lockout, there was a guy came to me and said, hey, I was in the States and I was at a bar and I saw they had NHL, like the game, up on the screen, and people were watching the computers play each other, just the AI play against each other, and they would cheer on their favorite teams. And he's like, "There's a place for video games in these social environments in the bars." I'm like, "Okay, let me think about this. Let's see what we can do." So I started in one of our little banquet halls. I'm like, "Let's just get some friends together. Let's play video games at the bar. Let's just do that for now." Yeah, I had 10, 15 friends come out. It was fun, good time, but it was no one new joined us, even though we had a sign. Anybody can come in. They're not going to do that. I'm like, how do we draw people in? So I started figuring out, okay, if maybe I run a tournament, maybe I run something to like with a prize in here. You get a gift card to the restaurant or something, and that drew some more people out. And I picked Smash Brothers Melee as the game because that was a game I played as a kid just with my friends. I always got stomped on. Now I stomp on them because of this, but it was still fun. It was a good party game, right? So we did Smash Brothers Melee, and then eventually I went down around to some local companies, got actual cash prizes that they wanted to sponsor in, and I think it was $100 prize pool for first place. So it wasn't big; it was $100, and I just posted on like Reddit and stuff. Hey, I'm running this Smash Brothers event. I didn't realize there was a heavy competitive scene for it at the time, and 73 people showed up as opposed to the 20, 30 we were getting before with the gift cards as prizes. So people are coming in from Toronto, like hour and a half drives to where I was at running these events. And, and it was scuffed. It was not good. I didn't know what I was doing. There was a terrible bracket, terrible format. I had 3 game cubes to run this on. It was awful. But this community sat down with me and told me, hey, this is how we usually do things. We appreciate you doing this, but this is how we usually do it. So I did that. I worked with them, started running more events. So from 2012 to like 2015, I just started running events behind the scenes, like up to like hundreds of people at events and flying in pros from around it. So that it kind of grew that way. But I'm like, I really wanted to get on camera again. You know, I was doing YouTube in the background, and I'm like, I want to apply this skill set to this new skill set that I have of running events, but I didn't feel like I knew the game well enough to commentate. I felt like I would do it a disservice. So, you know, Mark, July 7th, 2015, a game called Rocket League releases, and I start playing it, and I am hooked instantly. I don't put it down. Like I started playing 3 days after it came out, and the game played a lot, in my opinion, like hockey, and I grew up playing hockey my whole life, so it was it was it was cool to see. I'm like, I get this. I understand how this game should be played. I want to help people. How can I do this? So I looked around for tournaments that I could play in or commentate. I'm like, this is the game I can maybe commentate at. And so I got into it and I just started doing it. Thankfully, everyone had terrible headset mics. I was the only one with a somewhat decent microphone. So people wanted me on just grassroots tournaments. You know, there was no official esports scene. I started doing it. I met another guy, Lawler, who ended up casting the RLCS with me. And we did that for like 5 months. And then eventually the RLCS got announced. And I had just made enough connections, talked to the right people, that people heard my stuff, liked my stuff, and put my name in the hat for casters to get picked out. And then I got a call, and all I remember is getting off shift at work and getting a call saying, "Hey, you made it through. Do you want to? When could you fly out?" And I'm like, "Well, while I work next week." He's like, "Can you fly out next Wednesday?" I'm like, "I didn't know I was flying, and I thought I was going to be casting from my room." Sure, I'll just tell work I won't be able to make it in. And then I told work, I'm like, "I'm not coming in next weekend, and I don't know if I'm ever coming back." And it turns out I never came back. So that's kind of there's other details in there too, but that's kind of the condensed long version of how I got into doing this, just by doing it.
That's a lot of what people will say to do,
Uh-huh.
but I still find your path rather unique because you really started off not in the game that you're known for, which is a bit unique.
Mm-hmm.
Usually people, they're like, I got into this game and I got in esports. You know what I mean? Like, and then it
Yeah.
just like it's like the same thing for a very, very long time, even if they maybe eventually move on. So that's interesting that you got into not just like melee first and did some
Uh-huh.
organizational stuff there but didn't actually get into the scene.
Yeah.
But also that you just you just kind of saw video games playing and you're like, I should organize some things. That's a very proactive attitude that we don't usually see because organizing stuff is usually like it's not quarterback worthy. Like people don't talk about it,
Yeah.
people don't know who the producers are, like no
Mm-hmm.
one no one is like my aspiration a lot of time anyways. The
Yeah.
aspiration is not to do that. So it's really cool that you entered in from that perspective. Eventually tumbled your way into just wanting to cast and having a game that you could cast. And then we got up to Rocket League. So it's still a very cool story. But Rocket League is just a very interesting esport because I do feel like, having talked to a few of you guys, that there's some very like it's late into the esports game, but it's also incredibly unique to the esports game. So 2015 missed out on a lot of the bigger esports that we know of now, the biggest esports, but Rocket League's like closing in or even already surpassing
We're
them,
getting
and no
there.
one's talking about it. Um, but there's so many people that come into Rocket League and they're just like, I had no idea about anything else that was happening, which is pretty rare because usually people have either stories about being before times, before like 2010, or they come in with StarCraft, CSGO, Dota, League of Legends, like all the
Uh-huh.
things that were popular back then. So, anyways, it is such a unique esport. I am curious, how
Mm-hmm.
exactly did this, like the RLCS, really pop up? Because you're saying this as if like you said it, like you thought it was going to be online. So,
Yeah.
what can you draw us back to that time period and kind of what the expectations were for Rocket League as an esport and why you
Uh-huh.
thought that this wasn't going to be that big of a deal?
So I knew it was going to be a big deal. I guess the reason I didn't think that I thought I'd be doing it at home is because I didn't have experience in the world yet. I didn't
Mm,
understand what went into a production like that. I mean, the most entertainment production I had seen is friends that worked in radio, and obviously that's a much different environment than putting together an esports broadcast, a live entertainment show with cameras and everything, moving parts, directors, and all that. And so it's like I didn't realize I'm used to casting from home. The way it kind of started was one of those connections I mentioned I had made. His name was Cloudfield. Cloudfield was the grandfather of Rocket League esports. He's the one that I would sit up every other night talking for 6 hours straight about the esport, about what he should be doing moving forward. He was talking about investing all the rest of his capital. He's like, do you think this is a good idea? Should we do this? Is this esport going to pop off? Is it going to be great? And I always had the feeling that, no, this is good. This is something so unique. We've never seen a game like this before. People are already creating. We have so many talented people already, like just from artists to casters to people putting on production, just in the grassroots scene alone, that I'm like, this has such an incredible foundation. And then we also heard wind. Of course, I wasn't behind the scenes at Psyonix, so I didn't know the exact decision making, but we heard just rumors that Dave Hagewood, the CEO of Psyonix, always had a liking of esports. He always liked the idea of esports. So we knew there was the potential of the Rocket League Championship Series being cemented by first party, by Psyonix, right? Like they'll take control of this. And so Cloud Fuel and a bunch of others just kept at it for those, 5-6 months before it was finally decided that something real was going to happen from Psyonix. Because they could have gone the Valve approach too, where they don't actually have a hands-on approach to the esport. They just let the community do it, and they help out here and there, but they don't have full control. But Psyonix is like, we're going to go the Riot route. Let's have control over this brand, over this esport. And the cool thing is they brought Cloud Fuel on to spearhead that whole project along with Golden Boy. And he was in charge of talent. Cloud Fuel's in charge of operations. Let's get this whole thing up and running. And that was under the banner of Twitch. They were helping run the esport during those first 3 seasons. So it was that lead up, that anticipation that we saw it getting big. We saw people getting better, new mechanics being discovered. Like there's potential for this huge. And then again, when we heard the rumors that Psyonix might be wanting to get involved in this, that just propelled us even more to continue working, continue trying. Let's make this a really cool thing. But again, I think it was my inexperience with just production in general that I didn't realize, this is a fly out to California every weekend kind of thing. It's not, we're going big off the bat. We're not starting from our bedrooms. We're going in with a full studio right away. And I didn't realize that much investment was going to be put into it.
Okay. Yeah. I guess that makes sense, especially because Psyonix is just it's not a company that's had expectations in the esports market.
They had 15 employees when they put the game out. Right? They were in an indie studio. They worked on making vehicles for Unreal games, right? And this, they had no experience. So having the idea that this tiny company is going to expand so much into even have their own esports division it was so far out that you just didn't even think of it.
And it's an amazing story, esports wise as well as development wise. Certainly unique for our time. Anyways, but what is fascinating is that it was again like so brand new and different and small, and that it kind of hit a home run. It seemed like I could really didn't find a whole lot of complaints, and I've even heard that they did things that were already very good for esports without a whole lot of like trial and tribulation. There's good people hired right off the bat, I suppose. Like you mentioned, Golden Boy. Good friends with Gillyweed, and I know she was involved. So it was just amazing to watch someone who was kind of getting, again, all home runs, especially when other esports were not so much. So that's what I wanted to know from you. Did you watch any other esports while you were waiting for this our LCS call? Did you get involved in the scene that was Twitch at all prior to this?
Yeah, so I was always kind of up to date, at least a little bit, with just anything technology, and that includes esports. Obviously, again, I was heavily involved in Smash Brothers esports scene, and then but that was very much a grassroots thing. Nintendo does not. They shut down the stuff the community does. They were not a good first party company to want to deal with your esport, and so it was a very different approach, right? There wasn't that support from the developer. And then I watched Counter-Strike as well. I couldn't really ever get into a lot of the MOBAs and stuff like Dota and League of Legends, but the Counter-Strike was another one I got into. I watched a little bit. I mean, Halo back in the day, especially, during the days of Walshy's dominant days, Final Boss, like I watched a lot of that on G4 TV. when I was a kid. That was before all this esports stuff. So I always had esports being a thing. I knew about StarCraft, but obviously that was a lot bigger in Korea than it was in North America. The West hadn't really adopted esports as much. Halo was like the biggest thing probably. But then you see again Counter-Strike popping off, League of Legends popping off everywhere, and I knew this was a big thing. I knew just esports were going to be around to stay, especially again if something like StarCraft could be doing it in the 90s all the way up till now, and Counter-Strike, one of the longest running esports as well. So I always knew it was there. I always liked the idea of it as well.
Well, one of the reasons that I'm asking this, I do have ulterior motive, is that there was, Overwatch League. So Overwatch League came out, Overwatch, I guess, came out around 2015 with the announcement in 2015. And then Overwatch League, I think, happened in 2017, was it?
It was soon after.
It was very soon after, because we also were privy to the whisperings, kind of the same as you were when it came to this, like they're going to take control, like it's going to be entirely on them, and that was very exciting initially. But then I don't know, I already started questioning the validity of it when I played the game, and I was like, I don't know if people are going to watch this, but this is going to turn into all shutting on Overwatch League. The ulterior motive that I had was that Overwatch League and its problems, did it ever did it ever interfere, I guess, with this idea of the first party owning everything? Were you ever worried, or was it because it was such a grassroots movement and they were hitting it out of the park every single time anyways, that you were just like, it's incomparable to Overwatch League, it's totally different story?
Yeah, it's a great question, because the esports is still trying to figure out what the best model is, right? Like everyone's still, and I looked at more of like, okay, everyone's going to be experimenting. The next 10-15 years is still going to be experiments. It's companies are going to try this, they're going to try that. And I personally looked at what Overwatch. I remember talking to someone actually at season 1 of the RLCS, and I remember talking to someone specifically. I remember where it was just beside the stage back there, and I was talking about how Overwatch, and I'm like, Overwatch is good, it's going to fail, it's not going to be good, because I just, the way I saw that they're going in was they were trying to rush, in my opinion, the grassroots element of it. It's a fun game, and I played the hell out of the game, but when it comes to first off, spectating, very difficult. If you don't know the game, it's very difficult to spectate Overwatch. But I also saw it was just a rush, and I'm like, it's too fast. You need to foster that passion, that growth in the esports. Start small, get big. They just went big immediately, which is cool. And again, to me, Rocket League, what they were doing was already big, right? We weren't casting from home, but it was still much smaller. And to me, that felt safer. It felt like, okay, what's happening right now is Twitch, that was running operations, was they were trying to just throw everything at the wall and then start to see which pieces of it stick, and then piece those together to make it. And I would say, in all honesty, Rocket League didn't figure out what it needed to do or to be until season X, which was just 2 years ago, right? Like we just finished season 11 technically. And I think now this is where we found our stride. We know what identity our esports wants, but that was a long time, and that's 6 years of building an esport. But I think that's why it worked, because we saw at the beginning, and there are frustrations, I think, from every side at the beginning. We should be doing this, we should be doing this, we should be trying this. But a lot of people had a very narrow perspective of, okay, it needs to happen now, we need to do it this year. No, let's think 3-4 years out. And I think that approach, the team members they brought onto Sonic's esports team had a good grassroots mentality to them, that they were able to foster such an incredible supportive and experimental environment where we can say, hey, can we try this? Yeah, let's try that. If it fails, it fails, but you're never going to know unless you try that. And I think every esport might need to do that, because there isn't a one formula that's going to work for this esport that will work for this esport. You have to foster growth through failure. But if you just say, no, we're just going to do this right away, here it is, with such a huge investment from so many people, that you're almost going to force yourself to double down. You're going to get in the sunk cost fallacy that well, we can't change it now. We've just invested millions of dollars into doing this, millions and millions of dollars, and other people invested millions and millions of dollars. We have to keep doing it this way because we have to prove it works. And now you've just stunted yourself from growth. So to me, I didn't, a short story here to sum it up is I wasn't worried about failure from another esport because I saw the steady approach that Psyonix was and Twitch were going to have with it. And eventually Psyonix took over after those 3 seasons. And then when they took it on, I'm like, okay, they're happy. They know this is going the right trajectory. But at the beginning, I was never worried, but I always kept it in the back of my mind, like, this is going to last a year, but I'm going to have fun with it. And maybe that helped. Maybe everybody involved having that mentality helped it keep going, because we all just thought this was just going to be a fun little thing that wasn't going to last forever, right? There was no expectations that it had to last. Therefore, it could change and grow.
That was my follow-up question was, did this give you a lot of comfort believing that you were going to have a job for an extended period of time? But apparently not. Like, you were still going in it with like, I'm just going to do this for a year. So how did that affect your approach to like learning and growing? Right. So I don't know how exactly the time frame from you beginning casting to being hired for the RLCS, but you said that you didn't do a lot of the big boy stuff, right? You weren't like at the studios anyway. So there's still a lot of learning at the very least right there.
Yeah.
So, you're coming in kind of like, all right, well, let's just have fun while we can. Maybe a couple of big names from other esports are coming in to help you out. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But what was your take on, adapting and growing and how much you really wanted to sink into this esport? Did you find yourself hesitating and being like, well, it's just for fun. Like, I'll just, kind of wing it. Or did you actually try to be the best commentator ever and kind of think about that career?
Yeah. So I think what really helped was that I just, in general, I'm a person that loves learning new stuff. I don't care what it is, right? Like, there's nothing above or below me in terms of what I can be trying to do, or so I just love absorbing it, because a lot of times you can take skills from here and apply it over here. Maybe get really good at talking. My presence overall is bigger, better, and now I can apply that if I go back to working in restaurants. That's something I can use. So just learning was really fun, and I think it helped that we also had a group of casters that were, again, handpicked by Golden Boy, and I think, again, he did a really good job. Golden Boy was pushing. He's like, let's start with grassroots people. We had a couple established people coming in here and there, but it was very much, let's get the people that know and love Rocket League, because they're going to be the people that drive the most and probably work the hardest, because they care the most about the success of this esport. So incredibly good call from Golden Boy, and also because I got to do this, so that's a little biased here. But it was I think that helped, because every single one of us ended up being friends. I mean, I talk, hang out, and we have incredibly deep conversations about things nowhere near close to esports with each other, because we're all just really good friends with each other. And that helped, because there wasn't ever any toxic environment of competitiveness. The competitiveness was there, and we all made it clear, I want to be better than you, but I'm going to be very happy with your success and if you're better than me, right? So it was a healthy growth together that motivated you to want to work more, because you're like, man, that's my friend beside me is so good. I love that thing he did. I'm going to see if I can apply that to what I do. And then you do that, and they'd come to you and say, oh my God, I saw you were doing this thing. I've been trying to figure out the best way for it to work. That's awesome. I'm going to do, and you go back and forth, and you get this really, as I said, healthy competitive environment between people, where no one's sneakily trying to be better. Everyone's acknowledging that we're all trying to be better, but also, again, super happy with each other's success. So that helped want to grow a lot.
This makes a lot of sense, actually, because I had, I mentioned how, like, it seemed that so many people who are in the Rocket League did not come from established esports backgrounds, and that would make sense if Golden Boy was pushing for the grassroots. That's fantastic. Seems to be a good call. I know there was a couple. So Gila Weed coming in from here as the Storm as a host initially, and then Axel Toss was like StarCraft, and then I don't know, miscellaneous for a long time, and then so that was even then, they certainly weren't all stars, and I think it was clear that the broadcast is not looking for all stars, which is another difference between you guys and Overwatch League, where Overwatch League very much wanted to bring in all stars to give credibility to their name, and have a base expectation of skill level, which is fair enough.
Of course, it's a different approach.
Yeah, it is a different approach. But I do think that that type of thing does, encourage maybe a bit of toxicity. I think Heroes of the Storm was actually one of the first
Mhm.
ones that like people were like, it's going to be big, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, it's going to be that. And you had a lot of people jumping in from other esports. But Rocket League kind of just was like on in this like little like hermit crab shell, being like, we're cool, we're good. Like, and then
We,
like you
w-
started to like peek out a little bit, and people were like, what's going on over there?
yeah,
Before you know
I,
it, you guys are all established.
I think what's cool is that Rocket League didn't have any transferable skills. So even bringing over someone that's a professional in Call of Duty, CS:GO, Overwatch, whatever it is, it's not a shooter, right?
Mm,
You try to bring someone from League of Legends, someone from Here's a Storm. It's not a MOBA, right? Like the transferable skills player wise as well wasn't there. It was its own thing. Sure, yeah, and we've had casters come in and do a pretty good job, but it is very surface level, right? Like you can't get into the analysis. It's like with any game too, but it's almost longer because you have to like learn. Okay, how hard is that mechanic to do? How hard? I don't. I can look at any shooter and I could be like, that was a sick flick, right? Like I know that was sick because it's a transferable skill from other shooters. But you don't know how hard that musty flick double tap off the backboard is until you go and try and do one of those, even just trying to aerial. So it definitely helped, I think, that it was so separated because it almost had to grow on its own. And if you forced in some of those bigger names, it just I feel like it would have felt hollow in a
mhm.
way, right? Like it would have felt like they're just doing it because like the esports doing it because the esport feels like it needs to do it rather than celebrating the game of Rocket League. Nothing
Yeah.
against these other casters. There's so many incredibly talented people. It's just it. I feel like it had to grow on its own.
I feel like Rocket League becoming successful did open up this whole new uh, alongside the development of esports in the ecosystem, but still, this whole new kind of like grab 'em game type of esports
Uh huh.
commentator and host, where they are just willing to do anything and everything. And the more unique a game is, the more that it's likely that they'll be able to have a foothold there,
Uh
because
huh.
it's not comparable to someone who is dominating in CS:GO. Like Valorant was just a natural go
Yeah.
to, but like the dodgeball game that's out that I can't remember the name of is like it's completely unique, really.
Oh, the Dodge City or something.
Something like Knockout
That was a
City,
really
there
fun
you
game. Knockout City.
go.
That's
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, people like kind of stirring that up, but I feel like a lot of this did come from Rocket League's unexpected success, and what is still, I feel like um, underappreciated is not the right word, I suppose, but Rocket League is dominating a lot of the viewership records, for not like beating CS:GO, I guess, in million
There's a
million
couple
views
we're not
quite
going to
yet,
pass in
but
yet, but
but you guys have surpassed many like mainstream esports, and yet it
uh-huh.
still is kind of like on the undertow of the conversation. So that's really
Uh-huh.
weird. So where do you see yourself, I guess, in the whole of the esports world? Is Rocket League just doing so well by itself, and you find yourself secure in its world that you don't really see yourself kind of looking at other esports? Or I guess where are you at right now?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing just to give you a perspective on what a lot of people in the community feel like, and the kind of sentiment is this: we don't need anybody else. We need Rocket League, and a lot of people and not to throw anybody under the bus here or anything, but this will be probably the most drama thing I've ever said in my career is that it recently we had some players in the esports awards, but it felt almost insulting because a lot of the footage they used of our casters of our players was like 5 years old footage.
Mm,
There were YouTube videos they used of me when I was talking about Grand Theft Auto in the video. It had nothing to do with esports, and it's not to call out anybody that whoever did that. It just felt like we were an afterthought, and it really
mm.
drove a lot of us to say, you know what, that's fine, it's cool. We're happy doing what we're going to do, and we're just going to keep doing it. And if they want to bring us in, let's do it. We're not going to get butthurt over it, and um, and that's been the mentality I think for the longest time is just let's just keep doing our thing. Let's just keep having fun with Rocket League. Let's keep celebrating. We're going to keep telling ourselves we have the best esport because we know we have the best esport. And if we keep doing that, we're not going to have to compare ourselves to anyone else. We can just keep doing the best we
Mm.
need to do for our esport. And that's what we've said too, from Psionics to the casters, is whenever we do like a world championship, we don't call it, we call it a celebration of Rocket League. This is the fans, the casters, everybody that's involved, just getting together and watch some awesome Rocket League and celebrate the game that's brought so many of us together. And that is what it feels like. We're just celebrating the thing we like. We don't need to prove it to anyone. And maybe that emanates outwards. It shows like we just keep driving along, and people start saying, oh, they're still going, eh? Oh, they're getting bigger. Maybe I should pay attention. And maybe they will pay attention. But if they don't pay attention, I think to us, it doesn't really matter too much. We're just going to keep doing it.
For being such a very big esport, I feel like your world championships are 200K plus consistently.
Yeah, I think we peaked at 360 this time, which was our record.
There you go.
That's the highest, which is still far off from, other like League of Legends and CSGO, but it was a record for us.
League of Legends North America's not doing so hot, but yeah. So it's still, it's a very large number. All right. Like even everyone wants to compare themselves to the biggest and best, right? That's the problem with the internet, but, lot doing fantastic, but it feels kind of insular. And I guess that is kind of it's grown that way. And it's not that it's elitist, which could very easily happen. I mean, it could happen with StarCraft. We're all seen as elitists all the time. But you guys you're just focusing on your own cool thing, which, by the way, I love that your drama thing was like a 2 out of 100.
Oh, there's nothing compared. Yeah. That's the other thing about our scene is like everyone is like, even the players, as crazy as it may seem from the outside, most of these players are friends with each other behind the scenes. It's super, super tame or lame, depending on how you look at it. With our drama, it's almost nothing burgers every single time. And like our biggest drama right now is just a player got kicked, but he found out through someone else that wasn't on his team, right? And it's like, that's not someone, like, maybe it was just a mistake from the other player that they messed up and they're going to learn from it. But it's always just it's very tame. But it's nice because it's an inviting environment,
Yeah. I'm just gonna bump it up a notch and say that I hate the esports awards.
Okay, fair enough.
Like just like it's just out there. Like I'm sure I absolutely someone is about to write down my name. No, like no one cares about StarCraft. So like, even people who are really working on their craft quite a bit, and I think are excellent commentators. If you're not hitting that just kind of right esport, I'm not gonna say the most popular esports, because they do make sure to nominate people from. Like Rocket League, like you said, even though you are quite popular, but just not in the zeitgeist or whatever. It's a lot of Overwatch League, it's a lot of Call of Duty, it's a lot of League of Legends, and then they're like, we'll throw in some fighting games there, I guess. And it's like, okay, but it's not. I doubt that this panel of judges actually surveyed all of the esports.
Yeah, I think the craziest thing, the only thing I got out of the esports awards was seeing my name beside those other greats. Like Chris Puckett and Shocks, and that, like, having my name besides everyone else was like that.
That's cool.
That was cool, because I look up to those people, and I look up to how talented they are. But winning it, one of our casters went on and created his own award show 2 weeks later, where he just gave out the most ridiculous awards ever. Because you look at any award show, it is a little bit of a circle jerk a lot of times, but I think there's still, for me at least, the piece of, oh my God, how's my name there? Even if the rest of it was an afterthought, that was cool. So
yeah,
I'll say I took a little bit of positivity out of it. That's why I didn't go full in on them.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's still awesome to feel that way, though, because I think that while I believe that there is a just certain scope that it has, that doesn't mean that the people they are nominating are incorrect. Like I think they're all fabulous at what they do. Fabulous wasn't the word I was thinking of using today, but I guess now I use the word fabulous.
Try to use a new word every day. Fabulous was today's word.
There you go. So it's still really awesome. But anyway, so drawn back into just kind of like hosting and casting. So you said that you were casting with Lawler for a little bit. Yeah. I did listen to your guys' interview. Well, I guess he was interviewing you, but it was kind of like a dialogue thing. Yeah. So it sounds like that really worked out quite well for you guys, and you were able to, I guess, kind of push the casting forward for you, but as well as Rocket League, because so early on into Rocket League's development, I'm sure that most of the casters were literally just trying to decide how to cast Rocket League.
Yeah. So the interesting thing was at the beginning, Lawler and I actually had a hybrid approach because some esports were doing play by play color, right? And that was like the set thing. Here's your back and forth. Lawler and I had a very, it was, yeah, just hybrid. We both did both whenever it felt like it needed to be. And we would take over. It wasn't the same person hyping up a goal every time. And some other casters were doing that. And then we went to the RLCS, the just to make sure we were all comfortable and starting in the right spot. Golden Boy suggested, just for now, so we know where we are at the beginning, you do play by play, you do color, figure out how that works. And then we eventually got in a good rhythm of everyone figuring out, okay, at this moment, during the goal, you have 2 seconds and then drop it for the color, because then the color needs to break down that replay. And it happens so fast that you have to end quick. And then the color finishes in time for the next kickoff for play by play, calls out the score, calls out the time, gets us back into it, right? So that we hit a rhythm. But then we all felt the same kind of stagnant seed of where like we want to keep growing, but we can't grow. We kind of perfected this thing. What do we now? So everyone started shifting towards that hybrid thing again. But I think it was important to figure out, in worst case scenario, let's get a default. Let's go to this style of casting. But it is good. A lot of the casters are spreading out to the point now that they've almost perfected that. And we're starting to do try casting at our world championships now. So we have 3 casters in the booth. And that's been really fun to see, because it's so much diversity in the tone, in the amount of voices you get on at once. More people get to be involved with important matches. And it's a new skill to try out. So it's really fun to see that our esport is still trying to push what we can do as on-screen talent to continue to make it more exciting and better and grow ourselves. It's really fun.
It's fascinating that 3 casters, kind of came to be. It wasn't something you guys, I guess, initially tried and was like, yeah, I guess we'll just do that. It's still developing. It's still
Uh-huh.
experimenting. So that's fantastic. But you're also one of the few esports that does bother at all to try and do try casting.
Mm-hmm.
I used to ask like all my guests, is 2 the way to go, or is any room for 3? And League of Legends people would be okay with 3, but even then, I think they're so preferable to 2. And
Uh-huh.
then everyone else is just like 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2 is the way to go.
Yeah, yeah.
So Rocket League now also has, I think, still rather unique approach to that. So how does that work for English Rocket League commentating? Because really, the only other set in stone 3 commentator setup that I see is Korean, which
Uh-huh.
I know how their setup works, but I want to know how Rocket League setup works.
So I will say it'll be better to ask some of the other guys that have more experience with now, because I hadn't been doing some of the lands recently where we were really pushing into that. I've been desk hosting for the most part, but I've done TriCast online. That was interesting. That's extra difficult. And I think part of the reason that we wanted to, just to add some extra info here, is or context, is I think part of the reason we want to try 3 is once we got back to doing in-person events, the team had gotten so good at dealing with the limitations of online broadcasting that it felt like we had been training like we
Like
Goku with
Goku
like
with
the weights.
weights.
Yeah. Like we had been training like that. All of a sudden we took the weights off at a live event, and like, we can do whatever. This is so freeing. And I think that was just a part of the push to do the 3s. But how it works is like, I think what's good about Rocket League, and we have to be real, compared to League of Legends, it's a lot simpler, right? There are less things to theory craft about. We do a good job at filling when we have to. I'm very surprised. And imagine filling for 15 minutes on Rocket League and not repeating the same things. That was hard, season 7. And but what's good with 3 people is that you can have an approach to what should have happened there in between a break, or even during a game, what should have happened there, and someone else could come in with another unique. There's more chances for unique perspectives on the same thing, which I think helps as a viewer, just make it more attention grabbing. Like there's always something new happening. It doesn't get monotonous. It doesn't get boring. And there really is. I know initially there was a setup. Basically, you would have your go-to play-by-play. There was the guy that was like, okay, if there's ever a jam up in communication, or we're all confused what to do, this person takes the lead. There's always the fallback of this is the lead, this is the person that will take control, and it's usually just whoever's was doing the play-by-play. Everyone, as I said, we're all pretty in agreement of who does what things best, so we're usually able to say, yeah, you take lead, you're the person for lead. And from there on out, I know they've experimented with different patterns of, okay, person A talks, person B talks, person A talks, person C talks, person A talks, person B, and you rotate out the other two around one person. So it's a back and forth. Now, I know a lot of times in live events, because you're live, you can just point. And like, if you see someone about wanting to, they might like have their hands like wanting to say something, you can quickly end your thing, point and let them go, right? So that nonverbal communication, the physical communication helps a lot when it comes to making sure things are handed off and transitions properly. I don't know exactly what they tried again because I wasn't there for the Worlds this time. But I do, that was, I know initially how they were approaching a lot of the TriCasting.
It's still fascinating to hear, even like a kind of outside perspective on it. Just because I wouldn't, I don't know. I did listen to some of the finals, but a lot of it still goes over my head, even though it's just cars and a ball.
Fair. I mean, commentary, and this is the big thing to remember as a commentator: you are there to generate a story or an atmosphere. Half the people don't listen to what you're saying; they just want to know how you're feeling and to share that feeling. It's like when you watch like the Japanese game shows, and they'll have the person's face in the bottom corner of the audience, right? It helps to know someone else is also enjoying this moment. And so when a caster is, you feel that rise and ebb and flow with them. And that's mostly what you're doing, is generating an atmosphere.
Yeah. Which I think they did great jobs with. I could follow the main, the drama, I suppose, what was going to be difficult and what was supposed to happen versus not supposed to happen. But when it came to TriCast hearing, I couldn't really, I even had trouble maybe like actually distinguishing who was who, just because I'm not familiar with it, right?
Fair enough.
So I can't analyze it personally, and I can't analyze Korean commentators either. I just know from talking to other people throughout StarCraft's history, kind of like it is kind of more like color play-by-play ish, and then like a host basically, which is quite fascinating. But it doesn't seem to be really that appealing to other people, and it's also kind of funny that you would have Rocket League, which I would say is a very action-packed video game, be the one to do that. Right. So I know you're talking about, occasional problems trying to fill space, but, StarCraft and MOBAs, we share the problem of having a lot of downtime, like a little bit before the first gank happens, a little bit, the leveling of the lanes, like setups that don't actually end up doing anything. So it's fascinating to hear that Rocket League is the one that's kind of pushing this forward. But I think you talked about not having any monotony. And that aspect, it makes a lot of sense, because a lot of commentating, as you said, is getting the feelings across. But I also would say that commentating is just trying to be original all the time, and like trying to be different. The way you pace things, the way that your tone is, the words that you use. And a third caster would do that naturally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way I look at it is kind of like the meta that pushes like YouTube videos right now. When you look at any popular big YouTube creator, Mr. Beast, Veritasium, any of these channels, what they've done is the first 10 seconds, I want you to go in and watch any of these videos and count how many camera cuts or elements they put on the screen in that time. I can guarantee you in the first 5 to 10 seconds, you're already going to see 20 to 30 cuts. It's insane how fast it is, because it doesn't let your brain get away. It keeps you attentive. It keeps you into it because there's too much stimuli to leave it. And I think the same thing can happen with TriCasting, is that with so much variety, it's just an extra stimuli. You have the visual, fast-paced gameplay. Now you're also having multiple voices. Again, as you said, as long as they're unique enough. If you can't tell a difference, it doesn't mean anything. But I think that can also help just amp up some of the excitement for. We don't always do TriCasting. It's usually just for these larger, more exciting and more important games and events. But I think there's an element of it psychologically that keeps you into it, that just feels more exciting as a result of it, especially during boring games. Let's be real. Grand finals, G2 kind of pooped the bed on that one, and it was not a very exciting grand finals for Worlds. BDS just rolled over them, and the casters had to work with what they had. Having 3 people, I think, help can reduce the fatigue of two people trying to get through a terrible series. I'm sure you've casted a
Mhm.
series that's just like, I don't want to watch this, but you have to make it exciting, right?
We used to have games with the meta was a hour and a half long.
Yeah.
Nothing happened during it, by the way.
It's so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But no, I think what also is really important though is that when it works really. It sounds really cool when it works. So I'm thinking of like Pacific Rim, the triplets that were like
Yeah.
Chinese triplets that were
Yeah.
manning that's one what a Jaeger whatever. So I just like that. That's cool, right? But then on the other hand, we do the opposite. We do TriCast when it's super stupidly casual. Like people are drinking and like
Yeah.
doing
Yeah. Yeah.
TriCast, and
I
it's like
think
a
that's,
pro gamer that doesn't know
I
how to
think,
speak.
again, I think the affinity for us to be attracted to that is like, because we're all friends, we want to hang out and talk about, right? So I feel like the part of the drive, as I mentioned, was we wanted to continue to grow as casters, throw us as many challenges as possible. Screw it, let's do 10 people talking, let's see if we can do it, right? And a lot of times I think we just want to do it to see if it's even possible. Maybe it's terrible, maybe it's not good, maybe eventually we realize two people is better than three, but for now it's fun to see where we can bring and push it and learn. But also we do like to hang out and just talk, so I think maybe a piece of it comes from that.
Sure, why not?
All right.
It's really it sounds wholesome. I'm very happy that it just sounds like Rocket League as a whole is just it's soaked in all of the good elements of esports and was wise enough to hire people that could say what were the bad elements. Let's fix
Yeah.
those. So experimenting consistently I think really important. Something that certainly my esport is lacking right now. But um, going back to your developments. You start off as a commentator, as many do, because
Mm-hmm.
hosting online events is usually pretty awkward. But eventually, you got more known as the host.
Mm-hmm.
You did more hosting work, right? So, how did that development happen, and how did you take that challenge?
Yeah. So yeah, started as commentary, just doing it, having fun, and eventually a local company was trying to do their own G4 thing, because G4 was no more at that time, and now they're back. But they wanted to do like a Canadian version of that, like variety gaming show. And I'm like,
Okay.
sure. So they hit me up. They asked me if I wanted to do it. I'm like, this sounds fun. Like I can try new things, learn new things, and it was great because like coming into commentary and doing working with production was exciting in itself for me, because as I said, I didn't realize how much went into a production for an esports show. I didn't realize how many jobs, how many people with all these different skills. And I'm like, that was eye-opening. It was exciting. I got to learn all this stuff. Now I'm going to jump into something else. This is a live to tape show. We're not doing it live to air. We can re-record stuff. What's the process for that? What's it like writing scripts, all this stuff. So to me, that was a chance to learn, to grow more. So I did that show for a bit. And then one of the people working at Psyonix had seen me doing that. And they're like, hey, would you be interested in trying out doing hosting? We like the atmosphere, because as a host, your job is just to, or at least what I've learned, is to first off set up the atmosphere for everyone else on the desk. Your job is to get them talking. Your job is to make sure it's just what does the desk feel like, and the host can drive a lot of that vibe. Do we start in with real serious talk? Do I come in and make fun of one of the commentators so that they make fun of me back, and now it's a light heart atmosphere? And so I guess they liked the vibe I brought, so they asked me to come on. And I initially actually was on the fence. I'm like, oh, do I want to do this? I love commentating. Like I love casting over these matches, to be a part of the match, to be in there screaming, because I do that anyways, but having people hear my screams as a sick goal goes in, I want to be a part of that. And I was worried. So I actually asked Golden Boy too. I DM'd him. I said, hey, I've been offered this opportunity. What should I do? Do you think it's a good idea? And he said, well, you're always going to have more opportunities as a host, so that's a plus. And just again, more skills that you can learn, that you can go back and commentate. And so I talked to Psyonix about, what were my options? If I do this, don't like it. If I do this, not good at it, am I suddenly just getting fired? Can I go back to casting? Like what are the options? And it just seemed like a safe option to continue to try to expand my skill set, because I had done the hosting in a live to tape environment, now in a studio where you can mess up, to one where you can't mess up. I can't mess up the sponsor reads. I can't, these throws, I mess up plenty of throws. They're so hard at the sometimes, but I realized, you know what, it's very scary for me. I'm getting anxiety about doing this, but maybe that's the exact reason I should do this. So that fear of it eventually pushed me to do it, because I knew if I didn't, I'm going to become a boomer that doesn't want to change his ways. I'm going to get stuck in doing what I'm doing. So I had to do it. And that was kind of the growth, is that I got experience from doing this other show. They liked it, pulled me in. I was pretty stiff and terrible at first. And I still think I'm really not the best out there at all. That's why seeing my name up by other stuff, like, that doesn't make sense, but cool. But it is cool looking back. I have to look back and say, okay, what am I doing now compared to then? Oh, that is better. How do I keep doing that though? So it was worth doing it, but that was my growth into it.
That sounds like that you'd be very proud of taking that challenge.
I'm glad I did.
Yeah, a big step, especially when it's not exactly super slow dripped in. You had one kind of unofficial thing, but then right into official thing is a lot. It is a lot. And it sounds like you had a right mentor, Golden Boy being one of the best in the industry at a lot of things. And then also that you were able to communicate with the people that were hiring you is honestly a huge difference, because I do think that there's hosts out there who will say 100% that they've been pigeonholed, that they just are hired as hosts, and they'll say, "Can I cast?" And they're like, "Sure, one day," and they never get talked to
happens,
again.
Yeah.
So, and then of course the inevitable fear that if you say no one time in the hopes that they might consider you as a caster, they just are like, "Okay, so see you later, forever, bye." So that's very important that the communication lines were open. Is I guess what I'm getting at. Again, quite jealous of the Rocket League scene. So you're talking about how maybe your first official hosting gig, if you will, was maybe not the best. Did you ask for any particular feedback afterwards, or particular advice leading into it that you remember really helped you?
I couldn't say specifics. I definitely would ask people, and again, as I mentioned, we have a pretty open atmosphere when it comes to, in our green room after, we'd have a circle, just our own talent post more, that we would say, okay, here's some things I think I did good today, guys. Here's the thing I think I did bad. And then everyone else would go through theirs. And then we would say, hey, by the way, I did this thing earlier and then you did this, and it felt really weird to me. Well, how do you feel about that? Can we switch that up? And then we would then break our criticisms for each other. So you give an opportunity to get your own out of the way, and then everyone else can get into them. And so that really helped at the beginning for me feel a lot more comfortable, because casters would then tell me, hey, I liked it when you did this. So that helped me get direction on where I needed to go. And sometimes I would just have to ask people, hey, why am I up there? Is there something specific I like? Do you, something I did that you didn't like? And I would just have to ask those questions, basically. And I actually started something I do now. Instead of taking notes on the games as much as you did as a commentator, I actually take notes on the other casters, jokes they like, things they like, teams they like to talk about. And that helped me, because we did a lot of improv together, the yes ands, and build each other up. And I wanted to hand things to people that they could then build on. I didn't want to hand them something that they really didn't want to talk about. So that was a big thing I learned just by, I guess just ask again. I guess the answer here is I just asked, and we talked to each other, and it helps that we have a supportive environment. And we know we're blessed, because we've heard horror stories from other esports that don't get us along with each other as well, the talent in that. So
yeah,
we're blessed, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of other esports that have, I mean, at the very least, one person. I think StarCraft's pretty blessed as well when you get to our age. there's so many assholes left, basically.
Our age, we're in the grave soon.
So yeah, it sounds like again, the open atmosphere is really important, but then also it seemed to be a natural eagerness to learn and adapt was really important too. Because if you guys had just came in, said that you guys liked what you did in the first year, and then was like, "We're great, don't worry about it," you guys might still be considered very novice. Instead, you're considered very much on the cutting edge of esports professionalism, production, all the good things. So that's just awesome to hear. So I guess my next question would come to how do you set up a like you mentioned the emotions that you kind of bring in as a host and how important that is.
Mhm.
Do you do any setup prior to that? So you're taking those notes on the casters enjoying jokes. And I think Rocket League is the type of esport that changes the commentators to the analyst desk every so often, like you swap.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
to a degree, yeah.
Yeah, to a degree. So do you go in with that focus in mind that you're going to make this like jovial versus serious? Does it change on the stage of the tournaments,
Uh-huh.
or does it change on the tone of the commentators?
Yeah, no, we always look at like, okay, what's our macro here and what's our micro? You know, even at looking at the beginning of a tournament, as you mentioned, is going to be a little more fun. We'll open up with a pre-show that has some games on questions, poke fun of each other. Let's get laughing going. Let's get excited. We try to create segments that will pit each other against each other. We initially we would do like predictions, and then we would keep track of the predictions. But because inherently we're all competitive, it got so competitive that we all just kept making the same predictions, right? Because we all knew which team was going to win, and it just wasn't
Oh
fun
yeah.
anymore. So we got to the point where we realized this is entertainment. We need to throw the egos out the window in terms of our competitiveness. And sometimes someone will make a prediction or a pick that makes no sense really, but they'll come up with some sort of spiel of like, I believe for no good reason this, or because they're coming off of a hot streak through the lower bracket. They're gonna, but it was, you're grasping at straws here, but it helped create a little tension. It helped, make it not as boring and monotonous. And I totally forget where I was gonna. My ADHD got the better of me here. Where I was going with this, but the I don't remember. I was going with this
Choosing
straight up.
when to make it happy and go lucky and how
Yeah.
you
Okay.
guys
Yeah. Sorry. Thank
there
you.
we go.
So so it depends. Yeah. Are we at the beginning of this? Can we have more fun? Is something huge about to happen for a player? That takes focus, because the players are what we're here for. We're here to build their stories. So once we get to the point where their stories are coming down to the wire, it's, win this, go home. Win this, win worlds. That's when what us having fun out the window now. That doesn't matter anymore. We have to focus on the importance of this story. So it does shift as it goes along. Also, even in just like, again, the individual series is like, okay, game one, it doesn't need to be as intense unless it's already ramps up and gets crazy. But let's ramp up even that series alone. But always remember where the hype levels were left off coming from throughout the rest of the tournament. So game one on a like a semifinals will be a little more hype than a game one of group stage, right? Even though it's the same series length, this one's still further along, a little more important, but you still don't want it to be full blast. So being aware of those things is always important for the casters. Where should our energy levels be at? Where are the stories right now? And then if there are no crazy stories, then we go back to trying to make sure the atmosphere is light and fun with each other. But yeah, that all changes. To set that up is when the camera comes back from break. Welcome back to the Rocket League Championship. We just got off this crazy story. We can't believe we just witnessed this. There's a series. We're going into the player stories immediately. And if I'm like, okay, we're early on, let's have fun. We just get off that series and Gibbs is wrong again. Now I'm directing attention at them. All right, let's have fun for a bit. And that's now everyone on the desk knows where we're going with this.
Do you communicate these intentions to your panelists prior to it?
Not always, to be honest. So I've talked about doing this to them, so they're aware that this is what happens or what we should be. So I always tell people, if there's something we need to do during this, hey, we're going to do this. Can we do this? I want to tell this story. You want to tell this story? Let's get this. Guys, we're going to make sure that during the spot, I'll set him up, make sure we leave him room. We got 5 minutes. He needs 3, something, right? So we definitely have some preparation when it comes to, like a scripting certain moments, but I try to let it be natural. I don't want people overthinking a lot, right? So I'll try to just direct it that way. And if they take it another direction, that's on them, but then I'll try to bring it back. I'll try to corral them in, but I want everything to be as natural as possible. I don't want people feeling like, oh, I have to make a joke here. I have to be funny, because then you're not going to be funny, right? So in the moments, for the most part, no, I just do it, and people will go that way. it's easy to manipulate people. No, just people will go the route. They'll go that atmosphere if you start it off that way.
Again, I'm glad you brought that up, that some people, like, they're going to be uncomfortable kind of being forced to make the joke,
Uh-huh.
right? The two guys on the desk are being really jokey and fun, and the third guy is kind of more serious and just not able
Hmm.
to adapt, basically. And I feel like a big role of the host is not, it's to make everyone comfortable. It's to make the audience comfortable, and it's to make your panelists
Hmm.
comfortable, and even to an extent to the production comfortable, so they know they can trust you and not screw things
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you work around some of those conundrums? Because even though you guys have worked a lot together and it's a whole big family, and that's amazing. I'm sure there's still times where, as a host, you've been like, tone, and the other guy's like,
Yeah.
different tone, and you're like, okay. Would you say that you were kind of naturally adept at maneuvering these social situations, or you had to kind of think on this and say, what do I do in these situations?
Yeah. I would say if there's any skills that I would I just because I still think, again, compared to all these guys, they're so talented that like I often question myself, being like, how am I here? Still, like when you get surrounded by talented people, it's hard to realize where you're at. And you get desensitized to it. But one thing I would say that generally came naturally was just being able to flow with any social situation. I guess just relatively empathetic to people. I understand when someone says something that came off wrong, I can understand what their intent was and what they meant to say. And
Mm.
if I don't, I'll say, hey, you want to clarify on that for a sec? But like I'll try to be in their head and try to understand as best as possible. There's always, I'm never going to guess all the time, but I always try to figure out where they're going and help them get there. Cause it's like a sixth sense sometimes of being able to feel where the energy is going to move.
Yeah. Well, so much of hosting, in my experience, and more than I realized it, I picked up on other people doing it, is really getting people out of a tricky spot. So again, no one looks awkward,
Uh-huh.
no one feels
Yeah.
uncomfortable because of it. So if someone is like failing on a joke, you know, actually one of the worst things you could do is just be like, okay, moving on. Usually the
Oh,
appropriate response would probably just be like, you're fucking failing.
yeah,
Joke's
we
on
lean into
you.
it. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and then yeah, they just move on from it. But even when they're like grasping at the correct analogy, like that was
Hmm.
coincidental, but that worked.
Yeah.
Correct analogy, the correct words, that you're able to jump in there. So with that kind of description as a host, I assume you kind of agree to an extent. How much has casting really helped you, do you believe, into becoming the host that you are? Do you find that when you're commentating a lot and just talking a lot, I suppose, that you're better at hosting and doing other things with people? Or is hosting kind of one of those things that you just kind of have to like take a breath and get into the right mood for?
I think every single one of the jobs has transferable skills to each other.
Hmm.
Um, whether it's 100% of them, 10% of them, there's always something to bring. One thing that I think really helped um, from commentating first was you have one person to rely on. You guys are a team. And you are there to make sure, excuse me, that you both succeed at this thing. And I've had moments where I've done that ADHD thing, and this was actually a big thing for me, where I would hit that and I would panic. You're starting a conversation. You realized you didn't hear a single thing that other person said. You've been staring straight at the screen for so long that you look away and you almost feel like you're in a dreamlike state. Like it's panic, and you forget what you're saying. And I've had those moments, and I've seen other people have those moments, and working together I think all the people on the team are really good at recognizing these moments that they can pull people out and bring the attention to them. All you need sometimes is a moment to breathe, think, get caught up, reset, and say, whoa, that was weird. What are you saying? All right, let's talk. Or my thing was just admitting, where was I? What was I talking about again? Like that helped me not go over the edge on panicking. But
Mm.
having one other person when you're commentating help pull you out is incredibly important. You have to have someone that's looking out for your best interests as well. If you have another commentator working beside you that wants to take your job or move up a ladder, that's when you get to the point where it's not fun to commentate because you feel like everyone else is out to get you. But I've always felt like people can help me, and I've been helped. I've helped people on the desk. It's great because there's more people to help out. And one of the scariest things ever is stage hosting. That was one of the most nerve-wracking things in my life, because you're alone out there. You have no one to lean back on, except the audience if they're really good. I had a panic moment when I first went on stage hosting, my first ever time, but the audience was so loud and cheering that I let them do it, and that gave me the moment to breathe. But yeah, having someone to do that, and knowing I have those people is one of those skills I brought to the desk. I know I have people here to help me out, and it's going to be okay. So yeah, that's one of those skills to be able to get out of it, is having people to help you. The skill is letting people help you, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. I also think that a takeaway nugget of wisdom there was also like, if you are the type of person who's going to get lost in your own thoughts, again, embracing it is often better than just trying to hide it. So, it's even a bit of a quirk that people like. Maybe some people don't like, of course, but a lot of people are going to find to be very you is, to have a moment where you just go like, wait, what was I saying? And they're going to be like, oh, it's like Leaf. So it can work out even when it seems like it's not like the correct thing. It can actually work out really fine. Just trying to get comfortable with the audience and everyone around you, so that no one feels uneasy, which I think is going to be incredibly difficult at stage hosting. I really applaud you moving on to that stage, because I do think commentating and then desk hosting is like, there's still a lot there. As you said, you can work off of people you've already worked with. It's fine. But stage hosting, how did that come to be? They couldn't find any stage hosts for Rocket League, or you asked?
Yeah, no. So what had happened was season 4, I didn't have a visa to work in the US because I'm Canadian. And so I didn't work season 4, right? So I was out for the live, well, actually almost all of season 4, because I couldn't fly to Cali either. And so almost all of season 5 had also gone by, because we were doing 2 seasons a year. And then eventually I got my visa in time for Worlds in London. And they had, Sonics came to me and said, hey, we're not going to tell anyone. We'll tell none of the casters. We're going to fly you out. Do you want to stage host? Because we have all the other roles filled right now. But do you want to stage host? Let's bring you out as a surprise. And I think that added to the nervousness, because nobody knew until the moment I walked on stage that I was even there. So that was intense. But that's how it came to be. And then they had me do season 6 as well, but I was also doing commentary during the regular season at that point. But it was terrifying, and I applaud anybody that gets up and does stage hosting. I just hope to God you have a good audience with you, because that audience is just as much of that broadcast team as you are when they can support you like that. They got up and started cheering my name because they didn't know I was there, and I'm like, oh my God, they actually want me here. Okay, well, I can do this. let's do this, and that helped me get over that. And that was the big realization that, I can get out of this. Take a moment to breathe. You don't have to rush through everything. You don't have to always be talking. I know I talk a lot. Let me slow it down a bit.
And from that experience, and I think you did other stage hosting, maybe not that much, but
yeah, a little bit here and there. There was the Toronto Defiant launch party in Toronto. I did something with Marissa Roberto. I didn't really do much. It was like we were up there for 5-10 minutes, but it was like that was about it. And then I stage host again season 6. And I used to, I think it helped. I also did, when I was TOing, I was also essentially the stage host for Melee events. I would get up and be like, these players are up next, or here's the prize, congratulations. So I do a little bit of it, but I always got nervous doing it. But not the insane amount of experience. I have more experience hosting and casting for sure.
Well, I guess still, what would your advice be to those who are also being dragged into stage hosting or want to give it a shot and transition from all the other jobs? What would your advice be?
Watch Golden Boy. If you want to get up and try it, the biggest thing is, and this probably goes with hosting too, I found, have a plan of topics you want to cover, but don't script it. Maybe for you, maybe some people really need it to be scripted, and teach their own. Everybody's different. But I found that scripting stuff for myself, if you trip up, and the inevitability is you're going to screw up. Nobody's perfect. If you trip up, it could be hard to recover that if you had a cadence and a rhythm that you told yourself you have to hit. And actually, Gilly helped me with this one. Is is she said, she said, what I want you to do is go and the night before or a few nights before, think about what you want to talk about, but just walk around the room and start saying it like you're doing it on stage right now. And but don't script it. Just start saying it. Have ideas of what to talk about. That helped me whenever I was talking about, the bracket behind me on the big screen. Instead of trying to look like today we have this matchup later. I knew a matchup I wanted to watch, so that way I could look at the camera the whole time, and be like, look at that matchup later. That's going to be sick. I can't wait to see these teams on there. And it's so much more. You look more confident when you're not looking constantly back at the screen to help you. And yeah, she told me, just take the thing you want to say, have a topic, go over it in your head, walk around, say it a few times. But if you do that, you'll be good the next day because you already know what you want to talk about. If it's said a little different, who cares? But you're going to get the point, the meat of the point and the topic is there. So that'd be my advice to pass on from her, is just have an idea of what you want, know the subject matter, but you don't have to script it. Go out there and say it. If you know the subject matter, trust yourself. You know it. You're going to say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good advice. I think she did say something along those lines when I interviewed her way back in the beginning of this podcast. Oh, yeah. So that lines up, and I think I did actually even use it kind of to help me in my first foray into hosting, which is kind of funny because I remember having heard it from her and then being like, well, I'm gonna try and like do something and see how script writing basically goes for me. And yeah, scripting, it was terrible. I hated it. I had this whole thing in mind, and then just was like, okay, that didn't really work out. Let me try again, like to a lesser degree and a lesser degree and a lesser degree until now it's like, winging it. Yeah, now I just wing it every single time, time. Like you said, some people are different. Some people need the script, but I do think that basically the difference can be feeling like a host is leading the production and the show versus the show and production leading the host, which tends to also take away some of that, again, comfort, but just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like familiarity, like you're part of the group, you're hanging out with friends.
You can feel like you're ostracized if you feel like you're not really having a say in how the show is running. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So the more like it almost attaches the host in a bad way when it's, scripted, or they don't, they have to look at the props or whatever it is.
Yeah. So every single time.
Yeah. But yeah, excellent advice, I think, to end on, as we have reached the hour plus mark. So thank you so much for giving us your time and your insights and all the details about Rocket League. Where are you going to be? I know Rocket League Championships just happened. So what's in the future for you?
So I mean, my thing is I'm just trying to, again, keep my skills up with storytelling, with just making YouTube videos and stuff and streaming and that, keeping a part of the community, trying to not suck at Rocket League. And the next thing mainly will be, after a couple of friends' weddings coming up, I'll be doing the RLCS again when we start up the new season. So that's kind of the gist of it. I'm a lazy gamer for the next couple of months.
There are worse lives.
Yeah, I can't complain too much.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, cool. We'll look forward to the next season of RLCS. When does that actually start? It's like you said, 2 seasons a year. So
well, no, we do 1 season a year now.
Oh, okay.
And I can't tell you when that starts because they haven't said.
I was gonna say it's like a weird time to start up a second season. It's like the latter half of 2022, but
we're kind of hockey schedule kind of situation.
Gotcha.
Cross over to the new year thing.
Well, no NDA's broken here, but looking forward to whenever it does start. Watching some more Rocket League. So yeah, thank you guys for watching out there in podcast land or YouTube land, wherever you guys are. Thank you to everyone who supports the Patreon, patreon.com/ZombieGrub. Thank you to Shayne for co-producing, Barrett for reaching out and helping with everything related to the podcast, and to the people who go above and beyond in their support, Nick, Vinny, Steven, ET, Ravi, and CuddleBunny. Thank you guys very much for keeping this podcast chugging along, interviewing all great people like Leaf here. And of course, our next guest as well, which I believe is going to be Chobra. So that's quite exciting. So I look forward to seeing you guys back here for episode 59. Bye.